Mechanical failure.
Lewis Hamilton's gone off. Lewis Hamilton's lost it.
It's the invisible enemy every Formula One driver fears. You can't see it come in, can't feel it approaching. One moment, you're completely in control. The next, you're helpless, rocketing towards the wall, and death is half a second away. Throughout Formula One's history, mechanical failures have claimed lives, ended careers, and left the sport reeling. These are the most horrifying moments when the car failed the driver. And the first incident brings us to Monza, the fastest circuit on the Formula One calendar. Despite having its best season to date in 2018, Sauber driver Marcus Ericsson was fighting for his career by September of that year. Without a contract for the following season, every lap mattered. He needed to make a statement to keep his career alive. But I don't think what happened during the second free practice session was exactly the statement he was hoping to make. Ericsson nailed it down the main straight, pushing his Sauber to the limit. But as he approached the first chicane at over 320 km per hour, watch his rear wing.
Oh, somebody's off. Oh, that's a big crash. And that's the Sauber of Marcus Ericsson.
That's massive.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
The car snapped violently, and Ericsson became nothing more than a passenger, spearing into the barriers and barrel rolling 4 times across the grass before his mangled Sauber finally came to rest. By some miracle, he climbed out, completely unharmed. So, what went wrong? The drag reduction system, designed to close automatically under braking, had failed. The rear wing stayed open, and at 320 km per hour, that meant instant loss of downforce and control. And with a mechanical failure like that, there was literally nothing Ericsson could do about it. But while Ericsson's DRS failed to close, what happens when your rear wing doesn't just malfunction, but completely flies off? It was July 2004 in Hockenheim, Germany. Kimi Raikkonen was challenging Michael Schumacher for the lead of the race. After having a winless season so far, his McLaren was quick. He'd even set the fastest lap of the race, breaking the circuit record. But on lap 13, everything changed. As Raikkonen approached the high-speed first corner, the seemingly unthinkable happened.
Performance and the more laps. Oh, massive rear wing failure for Kimi Raikkonen, and a huge off for the McLaren driver. That was very, very scary.
That video is just crazy to watch. I mean, have you ever seen a driver's wing just fall apart like that? The car came to rest in a cloud of debris. Raikkonen climbed out, visibly furious. A catastrophic mechanical failure had robbed him of a potential victory, and he knew it. It was Raikkonen's 6th retirement of the season, but this one, at Hockenheim, was perhaps the most devastating, especially with his first win of the year on the cards. His reaction after the race said it all.
You were obviously unhurt in that accident, which was good news, but you did look rather angry.
Why should I? I was disappointed because I could have challenged Michael big time.
But mechanical failures don't always end with a driver walking away frustrated. Sometimes they end up in much, much more spectacular fashion. And that brings us to the 1989 San Marino Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna had claimed pole position and looked set to walk away with the win, sprinting clear at the start. He was followed by his teammate Alain Prost in the second McLaren, leaving the rest of the field to fight over scraps behind the dominant McLarens. And one of those drivers fighting for scraps was Gerhard Berger, behind the wheel of the Ferrari F1 89. He was locked in a battle for third place with Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese. It was only lap 4. Berger approached Tamburello, the high-speed left-hander taken at nearly 200 miles per hour. But in a horrifying instant, as he approached the bend, his car simply refused to turn.
And Berger goes straight off into the barrier. A big accident this, at 180 miles an hour, shedding bits of car, and it bursts into flame. There's a full fuel load on board that car.
The car slammed into the wall, shattering on impact. It clattered down the track for 100 meters before erupting into a massive fireball as the fuel tank exploded. Berger was trapped inside, conscious as flames consumed the wreckage. Marshall sprinted to the scene, desperately trying to save the Austrian driver's life. An impact at that speed was bad enough, but the fire too. The crash seriously looked unsurvivable, and for a brief moment, onlookers feared the very worst. But thanks to the fast response of the marshals, the fire was quickly extinguished, and minutes later, Berger was extracted from what remained of his Ferrari. Against all odds, Berger survived. He escaped with a fractured rib and second-degree burns to his hands.
If that had happened 5 years ago, not only would he have been dead through impact, but also because of the fire.
But how did his car fail so catastrophically? Well, as it turns out, the front wing of his Ferrari had failed, folding under his front wheels, which left him with basically no control over the car's direction. The failure happened at the worst possible moment, and at one of the circuit's most fearsome sections. And if you're wondering where Senna finished, well, he won, of course. But exactly 5 years later, the very same circuit, at the very same corner, the outcome of the race couldn't have been more different, and F1 would be shaken to its core. But we'll get onto that a little later. Sebastian Buemi was competing for Toro Rosso during a grueling 2010 campaign. As the paddock arrived at the Shanghai International Circuit for the fourth round of the season, the team was already reeling from a string of underwhelming performances. While they had managed to scrape together 4 points in the opening 3 rounds, they remained in the bottom half of the standings, struggling to keep pace with the midfield. In Shanghai, that struggle would turn into a nightmare. The back straight at Shanghai is one of the longest in Formula 1, 1.1 kilometers of flat-out speed. Cars exit turn 13 at 140 miles per hour, accelerating relentlessly until they exceed 200 miles per hour as they reach the end of the turn. Buemi accelerated down the straights. Everything felt normal. He approached the braking zone at over 320 kilometers per hour, but as he hit the brakes, the unthinkable happened. That is one of the most bizarre failures I've ever seen in the history of the sport. Buemi was left holding a steering wheel connected to nothing, watching helplessly as his car slid across the circuit with no front wheels and zero control. The car finally came to a rest in the gravel trap. Buemi climbed out, stunned but uninjured. But the question remained, what on earth just happened? An investigation revealed that the team had introduced new, lighter uprights on both cars, the components that connect the suspension, brakes and wheels to the car. They were designed to save weight, to help the struggling team get closer to the minimum weight limit, but they hadn't been fully tested under race conditions. The Shanghai circuit, built on reclaimed marshland with an expanding foam foundation, had developed a bump in the braking zone. At over 200 miles per hour, the car was at its absolute limit. Under the crushing weight of peak downforce and the sudden shift in momentum under braking, the right upright failed first as the car hit the bump in the track, and in that instance, all the braking load transferred to the left side. The remaining upright, already stressed beyond its design limits, gave up a millisecond later. And just like that, Formula 1 witnessed one of the strangest mechanical failures in history. But as bizarre as Buemi's crash was, it pales in comparison to the tragedy that unfolded at Imola in 1994. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix stands as the darkest weekend in Formula 1's 75-year existence, and it began with a horrifying crash on Friday. Rubens Barrichello, a young Brazilian driver and Senna's protege, lost control at the Variante Bassa chicane. The impact was brutal. Barrichello was knocked unconscious and swallowed his tongue, blocking his airway, and without immediate intervention, he would have died. FIA doctor Sid Watkins performed emergency aid at the trackside, stabilizing him just in time. Senna had rushed over to the scene and stayed until his friend opened his eyes, but the weekend was far from over. While the first crash on Friday was the result of a driver pushing too hard at the chicane, Saturday brought a far more terrifying scenario: a total mechanical failure. Roland Ratzenberger, driving for the struggling Simtech team, headed out for qualifying, but on his flying lap, disaster struck. After picking up some damage on a previous lap, his front wing failed at speed, sending him and his car hurtling towards the concrete barriers at frightening speed. The session was immediately red flagged. Medics rushed to extract him from the wreckage. He was airlifted to hospital, but the injuries were catastrophic.
Ladies and gentlemen, the San Marino Grand Prix organiser has received a report from the Maggiore Hospital in Bologna that the driver of car number 32, NTV Simtech Ford, Roland Ratzenberger, succumbed to injuries sustained in the accident which took place at Imola circuit during Saturday qualifying practice, April the 30th.
Roland Ratzenberger was pronounced dead on arrival. He was just 33 years old. The paddock fell silent. Out of respect, Williams and Benetton withdrew from the remainder of qualifying. Senna, who had set the fastest time on Friday, inherited pole position. But pole position meant nothing now. A driver was dead, and Senna, the three-time world champion, was shaken to his core. By Sunday morning, a somber uncertainty had taken hold of Imola. The tragedy had cast such a long shadow over the event that many wondered if the race would even proceed. Ultimately, the decision was made for the Grand Prix to go ahead, and Senna made the agonizing decision to take his place on the grid. For the 1994 season, Senna had moved to Williams, a team which, just 1 year prior, had completely dominated the championship. But this year, the car couldn't have been more different. Formula One had banned electronic aids. Traction control, active suspension, electronic brakes, all gone. The Williams FW16, which relied on such technology, was now unstable, unpredictable. Senna hated it. He described it as difficult to control on the limits, prone to spinning and unresponsive, but he was Ayrton Senna, and he would do everything he could to tame it. And on Sunday, he was tested to the absolute limit. As the lights went out, a start-line collision immediately brought out the safety car, neutralizing the race to a much slower speed. Once the track was cleared and the green flags waved, Senna led the pack into the high-speed sections of the circuit. Behind him, Michael Schumacher gave chase. But as Senna approached the high-speed Tamburello corner on lap 7, something went catastrophically wrong. The Williams left the circuit and slammed into the concrete wall at an almost undiminished speed. The car came to rest, mangled and broken. Senna sat motionless in the cockpit. Medical teams sprinted to the scene, but what they found was horrifying. A piece of suspension had penetrated Senna's helmet. He was airlifted to Maggiore Hospital in Bologna. Doctors fought to save him, but hours later, the news the world had been dreading was confirmed.
The former world motor racing champion Ayrton Senna has been pronounced clinically dead after a crash at this afternoon's San Marino Grand Prix.
Ayrton Senna da Silva, three-time Formula One world champion, tragically passed away at 6:40 p.m. on May 1st, 1994. He was 34 years old. Brazil declared 3 days of national mourning. An estimated 3 million people lined the streets of Sao Paulo as his coffin was brought home. The funeral was attended by racing's greatest: Alain Prost, Jackie Stewart, Gerhard Berger, Damon Hill. The sport had lost more than a champion, it had lost a hero. But the tragedy didn't end there. Under Italian law, the Williams team faced trial for manslaughter. The case dragged on for over a decade. Team owner Frank Williams, technical director Patrick Head, and chief designer Adrian Newey stood accused. The central question: what caused the crash? Well, after over a decade of investigation, in 2007 the Italian Supreme Court ruled that a steering column failure was the cause, placing responsibility on Patrick Head for inadequate oversight. You see, in the lead up to the race, the Williams team had made modifications to the steering column at Ayrton's request, cutting and re-welding into a lower position. It was thought that this modification failed, leading to the tragedy that unfolded that fateful day. Nonetheless, by then, Italy's statute of limitations had expired. No one was punished. The ruling was controversial, as many people had different theories. Were the tyres too cold? Was Senna pushing too hard? But the verdict of the investigation held firm. Senna's death forced Formula One to change. The FIA launched a sweeping safety overhaul. Tracks were modified, barriers strengthened, cockpit sides raised. The HANS device was developed, and 2 decades later, the Halo. The safety changes worked. Formula One went 20 years without a driver fatality after that day, but mechanical failures didn't disappear, and 5 years after Imola, another world champion would discover just how quickly brakes can fail at the worst possible moment. Michael Schumacher arrived in Britain under immense pressure. His championship lead had evaporated. After dominating the early season with back-to-back wins, he'd thrown away victory in Canada with a crash and struggled to fifth in France after an intense battle with his younger brother Ralph in an underpowered Williams. He now trailed Mika Hakkinen by 8 points. The momentum had shifted, and at Silverstone, something even worse was about to happen. Qualifying had been scrappy. Windy conditions didn't suit the Ferrari F399, and Schumacher missed out on pole, lining up second behind Hakkinen. His mood was dark. he barely smiled all weekend. And as the lights went out, I can only imagine his mood got even worse as he had a slow start, dropping down to 4th in just the first few corners. Desperate to reclaim 3rd from his teammate, Eddie Irvine, Schumacher raced hard, pushing his Ferrari to the limit as the duo headed down the hangar straight. Locked in a fierce battle, the two Ferrari drivers failed to notice the red flags being waved after 2 cars had stalled on the starting grid. So, the pair continued to battle it out, and as they approached Stowe Corner, it looked like Schumacher was about to get past Irvine, but as he hit the brakes, the car locked up, and then nothing.
That's Schumacher, isn't it? I think that's Schumacher not realising that...
The brakes had failed at 191 miles per hour, and the Ferrari was sent flying across the gravel trap before slamming into the tyre barriers at sickening speed. In an instant, marshals swarmed the scene. Schumacher, adrenaline surging, tried to climb out, but he was trapped. His leg was in agonizing pain, and he couldn't move it. He thumped the steering wheel in frustration. His miserable weekend was over, but it was far worse than just losing points. Schumacher was airlifted to Northampton General Hospital. The diagnosis confirmed a fractured right tibia and fibula. The injury was a knockout blow to his title ambitions. The double fracture sidelined Schumacher for the next 6 races, effectively ending his hopes of securing Ferrari's first Drivers' Championship in 2 decades. While Eddie Irvine stepped up to lead the Scuderia's charge, the void left by the German was insurmountable. Michael wouldn't return to the cockpit until the inaugural Malaysian Grand Prix, nearly 100 days later. By then, the championship was well out of reach. Silverstone not only broke his leg, but also shattered a season that, until that failure, seemed destined for glory. And speaking of Ferrari drivers and broken legs, check out this video on the worst F1 pit stops of all time, because in this video, it wasn't a Ferrari driver who got his leg broken, but a mechanic, and it was truly shocking to watch.